Cleveland wasn't supposed to look like this. Nobody expected the stadium, the fan base, or the entire NFL conversation to flip in a single afternoon. But that's exactly what happened the moment Shedeur Sanders took the field. It didn't just feel like a good debut. It felt like the arrival of a quarterback who wasn't waiting for approval, hype, or validation. He walked in and took it. The numbers alone were enough to spark chaos. More than 360 total yards, 4 touchdowns, and a level of control that made the Browns' offense look alive in a way fans haven't seen in years. But what really sent the football world spinning was the feeling behind it. The sense that this wasn't a one-game wonder. This was the beginning of something much bigger. And that's where the drama started. Because as soon as Shedeur started carving up the field, the noise around the draft came roaring back. Fans were calling him the true #1 pick. Analysts were already questioning what teams had missed. And the comparisons to Cam Ward, the cornerback taken ahead of him, became impossible to ignore. But here's the twist. The real story isn't just about stats or draft positions. It's about what was happening behind the scenes, what Shedeur said afterward, and the ripple effect his performance created inside the Browns organization. From coaching decisions that left fans stunned, to quiet tension on the sideline, to the leadership shift unfolding right in front of everyone, this game revealed far more than the scoreboard ever could. And the craziest part? This was only the beginning. Because if this first chapter looked like this, what happens next might change Cleveland and the entire rookie class forever. Before Shedeur Sanders even stepped behind the microphone, the entire stadium already felt different. Fans weren't just reacting to a solid outing or a promising debut. They were watching a performance that instantly shifted the energy of an entire franchise. And what made it even more surreal was how natural it all looked, as if Shedeur had been preparing for this exact moment his entire life. The stat line alone could have carried the headlines. More than 360 total yards, 4 touchdowns, nearly a 100 passer rating, leading the Browns in both passing and rushing. Those are the kinds of numbers veteran quarterbacks struggle to produce, let alone a rookie stepping into one of the most unpredictable environments in football. But Shedeur didn't just play well. He controlled the game. He dictated tempo. He moved with a confidence that felt almost out of place for someone only a few games into his NFL journey. And that's when the ripple effect started. Browns fans, who've been starved for consistent quarterback play for years, immediately recognized what they were witnessing. On social media, people were calling it the best QB performance the team has seen in a decade. Highlight clips spread faster than the broadcast could cycle through replays. Analysts began pulling comparisons to established stars, and a quiet but growing sentiment began to take over. This is what a franchise quarterback looks like. But what made this moment even more dramatic was how strongly it challenged everything people thought they knew about the draft. Rumors had long suggested that Shedeur was undervalued, that teams hesitated because of the spotlight surrounding the Sanders name, or because some questioned how his game would translate. Yet here he was, proving every hesitation wrong in real time. Then came the unspoken tension, the reality that Cam Ward, the quarterback taken ahead of him, didn't produce anything close to the same impact. Fans began revisiting old scouting reports, mock drafts, and draft night reactions. And suddenly the conversation wasn't just about Shedeur's greatness. It was about what the league may have overlooked. This wasn't simply a breakout performance. It was a statement, a declaration that Shedeur Sanders wasn't just ready for the NFL. He was ready to redefine Cleveland's expectations altogether. And as impressive as this game was, the story it triggered would only grow louder from here. The moment Shedeur Sanders finished carving up the defense, the conversations that had been simmering since draft night came roaring back with new force. It wasn't subtle, It wasn't quiet. It was immediate. Fans, analysts, and even a few former players wasted no time reigniting a debate that many believed had been settled months ago. Did the league get the #1 pick wrong? The idea isn't new. Rumors during draft season suggested that several scouts quietly believed Shedeur was the most mentally polished quarterback in the class. Reports claimed he processed defenses faster than most rookies, carried himself like a vet, and had the poise teams desperately look for. But still, Cam Ward went first. Teams favored measurables, traits, and upside. They bought into potential instead of polish. And for a while, nobody questioned it. Until now. After Shedeur's breakout performance, social media erupted with comparisons. Fans dug up old scouting reports that dismissed him as system-dependent or media-inflated. He resurfaced clips of analysts arguing he wasn't a true #1 option. And they countered every one of those takes with highlights from the game. Tight window throws, perfect timing, pressure escapes, and calm leadership in chaos. The conversation shifted fast. People weren't just praising Shedeur. They were rewriting the entire draft narrative in real time. Words like robbed, undervalued, and disrespected were everywhere. Viewers posted charts showing the massive pay difference between his draft slot and Ward's, arguing he missed out on millions he clearly deserved. Some even joked that front offices owe him an apology. But beneath the jokes was a very real sentiment. If the draft happened again today, Shedeur Sanders might walk away as the true #1 pick. To be fair, none of this is Cam Ward's fault. He didn't choose where he was drafted. He didn't ask for the spotlight or the expectations that come with being the first overall selection. But the nature of the NFL is cruel. Comparisons are unavoidable, and narratives move fast. Ward didn't even finish his press conference before people clipped quotes, slowed down his reactions, and used them as fuel for this growing debate. Shedeur didn't just outperform expectations. He reopened a conversation the league thought was over. And that noise wasn't going away anytime soon. While the internet was busy rewriting draft history, Cam Ward walked into his post-game press conference carrying a weight that didn't need to be spoken out loud. He didn't slam the table. He didn't sound upset. He didn't take shots at anyone. But sometimes the most revealing moments aren't loud, they're the subtle ones. And fans picked up on every single one of them. Ward answered questions with a steady tone, but it was clear he was juggling two battles, the one he just played and the one happening online. Every reporter knew the comparisons were unavoidable. Every fan was waiting to see how he'd handle the growing conversation. And Ward tried to stay composed, focusing on preparation, efficiency, and the team's game plan. But the more he talked, the more people analyzed the gaps between his words. When he said, "I'd always want the ball in my hands, but that's not what football is," fans wondered if he was subtly frustrated with coaching decisions. When he admitted the failed two-point play never worked in practice, viewers questioned the staff. And when he said the ball slipped on the earlier attempt, the internet immediately clipped it, calling it a symbol of the week. But one moment stood out more than anything. A reporter asking about matching Shedeur's surge of momentum. Ward gave a polite smile, said he was thankful for driving down the field, and kept the answer short. Too short, according to fans. They slowed the clip down, zoomed in, analyzed his tone, claiming he sounded tense, like someone who knew the conversation wasn't in his control anymore. Rumors online even suggested Ward felt overshadowed, especially with Shedeur's performance trending everywhere. Some said he looked irritated. Others said he looked motivated. And a few insisted he looked relieved the game was over so he could regroup. Nothing he said confirmed any rivalry. Nothing was disrespectful. But in the NFL, you don't have to declare a rivalry for one to form. Sometimes the circumstances create it for you. 2. Ball slipped on the earlier attempt. The internet immediately clipped it, calling it a symbol of the week. But one moment stood out more than anything. A reporter asking about matching Shedeur's surge of momentum. Ward gave a polite smile, said he was thankful for driving down the field, and kept the answer short. Too short, according to fans. They slowed the clip down, zoomed in, analyzed his tone, claiming he sounded tense, like someone who knew the conversation wasn't in his control anymore. Rumors online even suggested Ward felt overshadowed, especially with Shedeur's performance trending everywhere. Some said he looked irritated, others said he looked motivated, and a few insisted he looked relieved the game was over so he could regroup. Nothing he said confirmed any rivalry. Nothing was disrespectful. But in the NFL, you don't have to declare a rivalry for one to form. Sometimes the circumstances create it for you. 2. Rookies, 2 futures, one outperforming expectations, the other trying to steady the foundation beneath him. And whether Cam meant to or not, his reactions only added more fuel. Because what fans saw wasn't arrogance or fear. It was a young quarterback realizing that the spotlight he thought he had to himself might now be shared. And this was only the beginning. Just when everyone thought the night's biggest storyline was Shedeur Sanders rewriting expectations, the Browns quietly ignited a completely different fire. One that had nothing to do with quarterbacks and everything to do with what was happening on the sideline. Because while Shedeur elevated the offense to a level fans haven't seen in years, the coaching staff did the opposite. And the moment Kevin Stefanski explained what happened on that failed 2-point conversion, the entire city of Cleveland lit up with frustration. It began with a simple admission. Stefanski revealed he had taken back full control of play calling, not just influence, full control. And that meant the disastrous 2-point attempt, the one that killed Cleveland's chance to tie the game, was on him. The moment those words left his mouth, fans didn't just question the call, they questioned his entire direction. What made it worse was Shedeur's press conference. When asked if the play worked in practice, he didn't dance around it. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He simply said, no, a play that never succeeded in practice somehow made its way into the most important moment of the game. And hearing that from the quarterback himself only intensified the outrage. Reports online immediately speculated whether Stefanski was losing trust inside the building. Some fans claimed he was trying to reclaim power after criticism earlier in the year. Others believed he might be overcorrecting, forcing control instead of collaborating. None of it was confirmed. But once the conversation took off, it spread too quickly to stop. Then came the finger-pointing, subtle but noticeable. Stefanski said he made the call. Shedeur emphasized they practice everything for a reason. And the gap between those two statements painted a picture fans couldn't ignore. The quarterback brought clarity, while the coaching staff brought confusion. People began asking the question few dared to say out loud. If the Browns have their franchise quarterback, do they still have the right coach? Every fan knows how thin the margins are in the NFL. One call can shift momentum. One mistake can derail an entire season. And in a game where Shedeur showcased everything Cleveland hoped for, the coaching decisions overshadowed the result. But the most important part? This controversy wasn't the end of the conversation. It was the beginning of a deeper issue the Browns can no longer hide. While the coaching drama stole headlines and the draft debate kept fueling social media arguments, Shedeur Sanders walked into his press conference carrying a completely different kind of energy. Instead of talking about numbers or momentum or proving people wrong, he went straight to something much deeper, something that revealed exactly how he stayed calm in a game filled with chaos. His mindset. From the first question, it was clear Shedeur wasn't living in the noise. He talked about clarity, composure, and leaning on faith to keep his mind steady when the game around him looked anything but controlled. He said the mental part of football is where everything really happens. How you see the field, how you respond to mistakes, and how you stay grounded when adversity starts piling up. And for him, staying mentally locked in wasn't an accident. It was intentional, especially after the interception. Most rookies would panic, many would spiral, but Shedeur described it like a moment he had already prepared for. He admitted he felt the game getting stagnant and tried to create a spark, that instinctive pressure to make something happen. But instead of letting it shake him, he talked about how he refocused, how he reminded himself that the mistakes he makes now will shrink as he grows, and how staying mentally aligned prevents one bad play from becoming a series of them. It wasn't just reflective, it was brutally honest. And then he opened up even more. Reporters asked how he managed to lead 2 key drives late in the game. He didn't talk about reads or matchups or strategy. He talked about God stepping in during the hardest moments, helping him stay centered, helping him block out the confusion and emotion, helping him return to the calm space where he plays his best football. That mindset is what separates him. Because while stats show the physical performance, this revealed the foundation behind it. The patience, the maturity, and the emotional discipline that quarterbacks usually develop years into their careers. Shedeur already has it, and you could feel it in every answer. He wasn't shaken by the interception. He wasn't bitter about the 2-point call. He wasn't overwhelmed by expectations. He was in control, not of the chaos, but of himself. And that shift in mindset is exactly what started turning heads inside the organization, even beyond his performance on the field. One of the biggest surprises from Shedeur's press conference wasn't a detail about the playbook, the weather, or even the 2-point conversion fiasco. It was something much quieter, something most rookies would never dare to acknowledge publicly: the emotional temperature of the locker room. And the moment he brought it up, you could feel the entire story shift. When Shedeur mentioned the dispute he had with Jerry the week before, the room paused. Most quarterbacks, especially new ones, keep internal issues buried. They avoid discussing tension, disagreements, or anything that hints at fractures within the team. But Shedeur didn't hide it. He addressed it directly, calmly, and with a level of maturity that caught people off guard. He explained how both players chose to put everything aside, how they focused on faith and forgiveness, and how stepping into the game with no bitterness or negativity changed the way they played together. For a rookie to frame conflict that way, to openly acknowledge it, and then turn it into a message about unity, was something rare. And the fans noticed, the team noticed. Even analysts pointed out that leadership doesn't always come from age. It comes from emotional awareness. Shedeur talked about wanting the team to feel connected, about making sure communication stayed clear, and about checking the temperature of the offense throughout the week. That's not rookie thinking. That's quarterback thinking. That's somebody stepping into the role, not because the team handed it to him, but because he earned it in real time. What made this even more powerful was the timing. The Browns were coming off a week of internal pressure, coaching questions, play calling criticism, and public frustration. Instead of adding to the noise, Shedeur positioned himself as the grounding force, the steadying voice, the one who understood that talent alone doesn't hold a team together. Trust does. He said the pregame message was simple: no matter what happens, good, bad, or ugly, we stick together. And when a rookie quarterback says it with conviction and then backs it up with performance, people listen differently. This wasn't just forgiveness. It was transformation. A subtle shift from rookie quarterback to team leader. The kind of shift that doesn't happen loudly, but changes everything once it does. And now, the question lingering around Cleveland is simple. If Shedeur already commands this kind of respect, what does that mean for the future of the franchise? As the questions kept coming, one theme became impossible to ignore. People weren't just curious about Shedeur's performance, they were curious about his place in the franchise. Reporters tiptoed around it at first, But eventually, someone asked the question everyone had been thinking ever since he took over the offense. Does this feel like your team now? It was a bold question, especially considering Shedeur had only been the starter for a handful of games. But the way he answered told its own story. He didn't crown himself the leader. He didn't make it about titles or status. Instead, he approached it with the kind of calm confidence you see in quarterbacks who've already lived through seasons of pressure. He said he was comfortable being uncomfortable, that his journey wasn't supposed to be easy, and that he actually welcomed the challenge. That single line shifted the atmosphere in the room, because being comfortable with being uncomfortable isn't something rookies say. It's something quarterbacks who understand the weight of the position say. It's something leaders say. And as he expanded on that thought, it became clear Shedeur viewed pressure not as something to escape, but something to master. He spoke about how his story inspires others going through difficult moments, how adversity isn't a wall but a stage, and how showing resilience publicly can help people privately. That's not a rookie mindset. That's a franchise quarterback explaining how he processes the world around him. And meanwhile, fans were already watching the transformation happen. The dog pound wasn't just cheering him on. They were adopting him. The excitement, the loyalty, the belief, it was all there. Even Shedeur admitted he felt that energy deep down, calling it something new, something meaningful, something he didn't take for granted. On the sideline, teammates gravitated toward him. In the huddle, players looked to him. After the game, the questions directed at him weren't about mechanics. They were about leadership. That's how an identity shift begins. Not with a proclamation, not with a title, but with trust. Shedeur didn't need to say the team belonged to him. The way he carried himself answered that for him. And as the Browns continue to rally around his poise, composure, and mindset, the bigger story becomes impossible to ignore. Cleveland may have found its quarterback, but they also may have found its voice. When you look back at everything that unfolded, from the explosive performance to the subtle tensions to the unexpected coaching controversy, it becomes clear that this game, was never just about football. It was about identity. It was about leadership. And most of all, it was about a young quarterback stepping into a spotlight he didn't ask for, but one he handled with a level of composure that veterans spend years trying to master. Shedeur Sanders didn't simply play well. He changed the emotional temperature of an entire franchise. In a single afternoon, he reminded fans what hope feels like. He reminded analysts why intangibles matter just as much as arm strength. And he reminded the organization that leadership doesn't always arrive on schedule. It sometimes shows up early, uninvited, and undeniable. Meanwhile, the draft debate that once felt like a quiet whisper turned into a nationwide conversation. The comparisons to Cam Ward weren't about tearing anyone down. They were about the reality that the league may have underestimated how quickly Shedeur could.